9. British Williams. St. Louis native British Kiara Williams made her TV debut in Season 3 of the VH1 reality series Basketball Wives. She also appeared in the show's 10th season and was featured in the series Marriage Boot Camp. During her time off-screen, Williams co-hosted a morning radio show. In 2021, Williams was indicted on federal charges for allegedly underreporting her business income and failing to pay her taxes. She was also accused of opening bank accounts and lines of credit under other people's identities without their knowledge or permission. According to federal authorities, Williams continued committing financial crimes after her indictment. She allegedly benefited from a COVID rent relief program that she did not legitimately qualify for and filed fake medical bills to an insurance company. Altogether, the total amount of money she swindled is estimated at $564,000. The 34-year-old accused fraudster also traveled without permission while on pre-trial monitoring and complained that the court-imposed restrictions were preventing her from working. In 2023, Williams pleaded guilty to 5 counts of misuse of a social security number, 4 counts of bank fraud, 3 counts of making false statements to the IRS, and 3 counts of wire fraud. She was sentenced to 4 years in prison and was apprehended by US Marshals after failing to surrender herself to start serving her sentence. 8. Matt Rife. American comedian Matt Rife's career saw an extremely slow start. For over a decade, he performed in comedy clubs for cheap, often failing to sell out shows as he struggled to make a name for himself. He received a much-needed boost in 2022 thanks to TikTok, where he attracted a following of nearly 16 million over a several-month period. Within 2 days of announcing his upcoming problematic tour in 2023, Rife had sold out 260 upcoming gigs in North America, Europe, and Australia. And while he remains popular, he's also garnered a large number of haters. The growing disapproval toward Rife began with the release of his Netflix special Natural Selection, which was criticized by Cracked as a laundry list of complaints about women. Vulture critic Catherine Van Arendonk described the special as consisting of half uninspiring D-jokes and entirely underwhelming. The performance also attracted controversy due to a joke Rife makes about domestic violence. Instead of genuinely apologizing or at least admitting that the joke was insensitive, however, Rife wrote a fake apology note and linked it to a website that sells special needs helmets. About a month after the special premiered, Rife faced intense backlash for allegedly getting into an online beef with a 6-year-old and telling the child that his mother buys things for him with earnings from OnlyFans. The boy's mother, Bunny Hedaya, explained in a TikTok video that her son had criticized Rife for being mean to girls. In a since-deleted private message, Rife told the boy that Santa wasn't real and went on to make the distasteful remark about his mother being an OnlyFans model. Hedaya denied the allegation about being an adult model and demonstrated solidarity with her son by pointing out Rife's offensive attitude toward women. For now, Rife continues to sell out shows, but it's become somewhat rare for newspaper articles to mention him without focusing on his controversial behavior. And while many are willing to overlook the insensitivity that comes along with his style of humor, others just aren't feeling it. Whether his success continues or ends up being cancelled remains to be seen. 7. Ellen DeGeneres. For years, Ellen DeGeneres was widely praised as a trailblazer during an era when the American media was largely unwelcoming toward gay and lesbian entertainers. She was also famous for her quick-witted humor and the kindness she displayed in front of the camera. But Ellen was allegedly a much different person behind the scenes. Shortly after the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, crew members began complaining about a toxic work environment fraught with racism, intimidation, and fear. Employees claimed that they had been banned from making eye contact with Ellen or greeting her, while workers of color accused executives of targeting them with racist abuse and microaggressions. One man said that he was fired for asking Ellen what floor she was going to after she entered an elevator. Other former workers claimed that they were fired for taking medical and bereavement leave. There were also allegations of assault in the workplace, and while many of these accusations didn't point the finger at Ellen directly, it begged the question of why she may have allowed this type of behavior to go on. Warner Media launched an internal investigation into the claims, which Ellen adamantly denied. In the meantime, members of the public came forward in a viral Twitter thread with horrifying claims about what it was like to cross paths with the Emmy Award-winning TV host in person. One witness wrote that she served Ellen at a restaurant one morning after working late the night before. Ellen allegedly complained about the woman's chipped nail polish, which she didn't have time to fix between shifts, and she nearly lost her job. The scandal about Ellen's alleged mean side went viral, prompting her to apologize. She vowed to implement changes toward a better workplace culture, but the damage was done. In late 2021, Ellen announced that her show was coming to an end after its upcoming 19th season. The controversy largely died down in the years following the show's end. In March 2024, Ellen reappeared in news headlines regarding a selfie she took with other celebrities at the Oscars a decade earlier. The photo features Jennifer Lawrence, Jared Leto, Meryl Streep, Jordan Peele, Channing Tatum, Julia Roberts, Brad Pitt, Kevin Spacey, and several other famous actors and actresses. 10 years after the picture was snapped, several of the people in it have experienced major downturns in their careers and personal lives, giving the photo a reputation for being cursed. Actor Kevin Cooper has been nominated for 12 Oscars and has never won. Every movie that Julia Roberts has starred in since 2014 was a flop, and Brad Pitt went through a very public divorce that the entire world fixated its eyes on. The stars in the photo have met with other misfortunes, which you may end up learning about later in today's video. 6. Kevin Spacey. With a theater and film career spanning more than 4 decades, American actor Kevin Spacey has received numerous awards for his performances, including 2 Academy Awards, a Golden Globe Award, and a Tony Award. He was well respected in the industry, with a pretty much unblemished track record for his personal conduct until 2017, when decades-old allegations started coming out of the woodwork. The same year Spacey hosted the Tony Awards, Broadway actor Anthony Rapp accused him of making unwanted advances during a party back in 1986. Rapp, who was a teenager at the time of the alleged assault, claimed that 26-year-old Spacey had come onto him in a seemingly intoxicated state. On the same day the allegations broke, Spacey posted a tweet claiming he didn't remember the encounter, but that he was sorry for his behavior. He came out as gay in the statement, which many criticized as an attempt to distract the audience from the nature of Rapp's accusations. Spacey was also criticized for blaming drunkenness for his actions, and for the implied connection between being gay and committing acts of abuse that he seemed to make in his apology. The backlash was so intense that HBO suspended filming during the final season of House of Cards, and the season was shortened by 5 episodes. An upcoming Netflix film that Spacey had participated in was cancelled, and he was cut out of other ongoing projects. In a YouTube video posted to his account on Christmas Eve the following year, Spacey appeared to deny the allegations. Journalists and celebrities criticized the video as bizarre, creepy, and stomach-churning. In 2020, 3 years after the allegations came to light, Anthony Rapp sued Spacey under New York Child Victims Act, which temporarily suspended the statute of limitations on certain abuse cases. A jury found Spacey innocent and ordered Rapp to repay more than $39,000 in court costs to the actor. Later that year, Spacey and his production companies were ordered to pay $31 million for harassment policy violations that allegedly occurred on the House of Cards set. In 2022, Spacey publicly apologized for the distasteful way he came out during his apology to Anthony Rapp. He said that it was never his intention to distract people from the allegations he faced or conflate them with his sexual orientation. Later that year, he was charged in the United Kingdom with 12 assault-related crimes involving 4 alleged victims. Rather than await an extradition order, he voluntarily traveled to Britain to face the charges in court and was found not guilty on all counts. And while Spacey was cleared of wrongdoing in most of the cases he's faced over the years, his career has never been the same. 5. James Franco. Award-winning actor and director James Franco experienced large-scale success starting in the early 2000s with his performances in the Spider-Man trilogy. He went on to star in multiple highly rated films, including Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Spring Breakers, and Pineapple Express. Franco's career began a downward spiral in 2014 when the then 35-year-old tried persuading a 17-year-old woman to meet at a hotel room in New York City. The girl posted screenshots of the conversation on Instagram, and many were disgusted by Franco's behavior. Because the legal consent age in New York is 17, he'd not broken any laws, but the age gap still bothered people. Franco admitted to his actions and apologized. 4 years later, in 2018, he wore a pin to the Golden Globe Awards to show his support for the Me Too movement. Actress Ali Sheedy criticized the move, while hinting that she'd quit her role in a play due to Franco's problematic behavior. Meanwhile, Franco's ex-girlfriend Violet Paley accused him of forcing her to perform a certain act against her will during their relationship. The New York Times cancelled a planned upcoming event with the actor due to the allegations, which he described as not accurate. But the accusations kept coming, with at least 5 women coming forward with claims that Franco behaved inappropriately while acting as their mentor or teacher. Some of the women accused him of implying that they would have increased career opportunities if they were willing to do certain things. Others claimed that Franco became angry when no women were willing to go topless on a film set. In 2021, it was revealed that Franco had agreed to pay $2.2 million to resolve 2 lawsuits, including a class action case brought by 1,500 students who claimed they'd been defrauded. Later that year, Franco's longtime business partner, actor Seth Rogen, said that he'd probably never work with Franco again. He said it was due to allegations that he'd tried to entice or bribe an actress who attempted to quit her role in a film that they were working on together. Several months after that, Franco admitted to engaging in inappropriate relations with students and said that he had been receiving treatment for his addiction since 2016. The disgraced actor has pretty much fallen off the radar since then. He's continued to land acting gigs, including as Cuban dictator Fidel Castro in the 2022 film Elena of Cuba, but he's no longer receiving the praise or attention that once landed him in the center of Hollywood. And with nobody having anything nice to say about him, he seems perfectly happy to stay out of the spotlight. 4. Iggy Azalea. Australian rapper Amethyst Amelia Kelly, better known as Iggy Azalea, was a breakout success with the release of her chart-topping single Fancy in 2014. She went on to win numerous awards, including 2 American Music Awards, 3 Billboard Awards, a People's Choice Award, and more. Following the release of her first album, The New Classic, Azalea released several singles in hopes of building anticipation for her second album. But plans for the album's release fell apart due to personal conflicts and conflicts with her record label. Azalea made plans to produce the album under a different record label, but ran into additional conflicts which led to the termination of her relationship with the company. She finally released her second album, In My Defense, in 2019, and a third album, The End of an Era, in 2021. But her career was never restored to its former glory, and in 2024, Azalea announced in an open letter to her fans that she was halting work on yet another album. In the letter, Azalea denied past rumors that she'd been bullied out of the music industry. She said that she simply feels more passionately about design and creative direction, and that she's lost the urge to finish her album. Azalea also denied allegations that the album was cancelled due to the end of her partnership with Tory Lanez, who was sentenced to prison in 2022 for shooting Megan Thee Stallion. The singer had publicly supported Lanez throughout his legal battle, even writing a letter to the judge overseeing the case in support of her legally embattled friend. Azalea implored the judge for leniency in the letter, which boasted about her history of touring with big-name artists and the awards she'd won for her music. She denied that Lanez was an abuser, despite ample evidence of his harassment toward Megan Thee Stallion and the obvious fact that he shot her. In her plea for a light sentence for Lanez, Azalea told the judge that she already had work lined up for him on his release and that she'd hired 6 of his colleagues to work on her album. And as we all know, that project was a flop. And while it's unclear whether the leaked letter had an impact on Azalea's already struggling career, it's probably safe to assume that it did her no favors. 3. Zachary Tai Brian. Zachary Tai Brian is best known for his role as Brad Taylor in the American 1990s sitcom Home Improvement. He went on to appear in numerous TV shows and movies, but his on-screen career had mostly fizzled out by 2010. Brian continued to work off-camera as a director, and until relatively recently, it seemed like he was living the American dream. He lived in a multi-million-dollar home in Los Angeles with his wife and children, and while his film and TV career had quieted down, he was enjoying considerable success as a cryptocurrency investor. During Brian's marriage to his first wife, which lasted from 2007 to 2020, the couple had 4 children. Just 16 days after the former couple announced their split, Brian was arrested for allegedly assaulting and strangling his girlfriend at their apartment in Lane County, Oregon. He pleaded guilty to 2 out of 8 charges and was sentenced to 3 years of probation, during which time he was ordered to attend a batterer intervention program. In 2021, Brian announced his engagement to model Johnny Faye. The couple have 3 children together, making him a father of 7, and he hasn't been setting a very good example to all those kids in recent years as he faces mounting legal issues. In mid-2023, Brian was arrested for another domestic violence incident in Eugene, Oregon, which would eventually result in a felony assault conviction. Around the same time, The Hollywood Reporter revealed that several victims had accused Brian of running a fraudulent agriculture technology startup scheme. 4 sources reportedly told the magazine that they'd given Brian payments ranging between $5,000 and $25,000 for worthless, bogus contracts. According to the victims, Brian vanished from LA after his divorce. When they tried reaching him to ask about their money, they received a reply from someone claiming they'd just gotten the phone number and that Brian must have changed his. Brian also has an extensive history of drunk driving arrests dating back to 2004. He's been charged with DUI 4 times since 2020, with his most recent arrest coming in March 2024 after he struck another vehicle in Riverside County, California at 2 in the morning. The 42-year-old is facing an enhanced felony-level charge due to his multiple DUI convictions, and he's also facing misdemeanor hit-and-run and property damage charges. 2. Amanda Bynes. Amanda Bynes became one of America's most famous child stars following her debut on the kids' comedy show All That during the mid-1990s. She went on to land her own series, The Amanda Show, and enjoyed continued success until she announced in 2010 that she was taking a break from acting. The decision came after Bynes had turned heads with her strange behavior on the set of the movie Hall Pass, which led to her leaving the project. Fast forward 2 years to 2012, and Bynes was making news headlines more frequently for her erratic outbursts than she was for her talent. That same year, the troubled young woman embarked on a self-destructive campaign. It began with a series of traffic violations, including talking on her cell phone while driving, hitting a car and fleeing the scene, and crashing into a cop car while allegedly under the influence. Bynes posted a tweet denying the allegations and urging then-President Barack Obama to fire the officer who arrested her. She claimed that she was doing better than ever, despite facing 2 hit-and-run charges and being dropped by her agent, her lawyer, and her publisher. The reckless behavior continued as Bynes threatened to sue numerous publications for making statements that she claimed were inaccurate. Statements that she was mentally ill and that she'd been seen walking around naked in a tanning salon. In a 2013 In Touch interview, she claimed that she was sober and that she didn't understand why people accused her of being crazy. When photos of an alleged drug-fueled party at her Manhattan apartment were leaked, she denied being the person in the photos and claimed that the alleged lookalike was an imposter. Over the following handful of years, Bynes faced drug charges, spent time in a psych ward, went to rehab, accused her father of childhood abuse that her parents adamantly denied, and allegedly started a fire on her property. She eventually revealed that she'd been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and manic depression. Her social media activity grew increasingly sparse and then stopped completely in 2015. She's kept mostly quiet since, but has opened up about her mental health struggles and prior drug use in rare interviews, and has continued to occasionally make news headlines. In 2020, it appeared as though Bynes had gotten her life on track as she celebrated 1 year of sobriety. 2 years later, a judge freed her from a 9-year conservatorship, giving her control over her healthcare decisions for the first time in nearly a decade. But it became apparent that things had unfortunately gone downhill again in March of 2023, when Bynes was allegedly seen walking naked in downtown Los Angeles. She reportedly flagged down a car and called 911 on herself and was detained on a psychiatric hold. The Los Angeles Times reported that Bynes was released to outpatient care the following month, although a representative for the troubled 37-year-old declined to confirm the news. Bynes was taken into custody on yet another psychiatric hold in June of 2023. According to the most recent available updates, her family's grown increasingly concerned over her behavior as she undergoes therapy and medication management for her mental health struggles. And now for number 1. But if you want to hear more bizarre and crazy stories, stay tuned after the video for some more content. 1. Sean Combs. Whether you know him as Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, or just Diddy, Sean Combs rose to fame during the 1990s as an iconic American record producer and musician. His label, Bad Boy Records, is credited with helping to advance the careers of some of modern history's most celebrated stars, including Usher, the Notorious B.I.G., and Mary J. Blige. In addition to producing other artists and becoming a respected rapper in his own right, Combs gained incredible wealth through other business ventures, including a years-long partnership with Ciroc Vodka. He'd also owned clothing companies and held major stakes in other businesses, including a TV network, an athletic beverage brand, and a competitive gaming company. But not all of his fame and fortune was earned in an honest fashion, according to bombshell allegations that have been waged against Combs in recent years. In 2017, his former chef Cindy Ruella accused him of harassment and other violating behavior in a civil lawsuit. The case was settled in 2019 for an undisclosed amount. 4 years later, in 2023, Diddy's former partner Cassie Ventura accused him of trafficking and physically abusing her during their relationship. The case was quickly settled under undisclosed terms. At least 3 other women sued Combs for alleged assault, and 2 of those women claimed to be victims of revenge porn. In February 2024, music producer Rodney Lil Rod Jones filed a lawsuit accusing Combs of drugging and assaulting him, and forcing him to be intimate with prostitutes. The lawsuit names several co-defendants, including actor Cuba Gooding Jr., and names Prince Harry as someone Combs associated with in order to attract guests to his parties. Speaking through his lawyer, Combs dismissed the allegations as pure fiction, but he's only fallen under increased legal scrutiny since news of the case broke. In late March, federal authorities raided properties owned by Diddy in Miami, New York, and Los Angeles. The government's remaining tight-lipped about the reasons for the raids, which were carried out in connection with an ongoing investigation. According to the Miami Herald, federal agents were seen stopping and talking to Combs at the Opa-locka airport on the day of the raids. He was cleared to go on a planned vacation to Antigua and Barbuda, and his whereabouts have remained a mystery since. 12. Tekashi 6ix9ine. Brooklyn-born rapper Daniel Hernandez, better known as Tekashi 6ix9ine, exploded onto the music scene in 2017 at the age of 21. And in addition to his music, he quickly became known for his rainbow-colored hair and heavily tattooed face and body. For a while, the young artist's future seemed as bright as his vividly dyed locks, despite his reputation for getting into bitter feuds with other celebrities. He rose to fame even though he had a prior felony conviction for violating a young woman and is a member of the 9 Trey Gangsters, a subset of the infamous Blood Street Gang. Hernandez seemed to relish in his status as a rap supervillain, but the antagonistic persona that helped him rise into the spotlight also played a big role in his fall from stardom. In July of 2018, 3 armed assailants kidnapped Hernandez from outside his home during the early morning hours. They forced him into a vehicle, pistol-whipped him, and stole over $750,000 worth of jewelry and $35,000 in cash before he escaped and flagged down a stranger to call the cops. The attack would eventually be linked to fellow 9 Trey Gangsters member Anthony Harv Ellison. 4 months later, Hernandez was arrested on federal racketeering, drug and weapons counts in connection with his gang activities. He faced a slew of charges, including conspiracy to commit murder and armed robbery. These crimes carried a sentence of 47 years to life if convicted. While being held without bail, he had to be moved to a different jail at least once due to his ongoing altercations with other inmates, including rival gang members. Like many criminal defendants who find themselves caught between a rock and a hard place, Hernandez took a plea deal and admitted to 9 counts. He also broke the #1 rule of gang culture and turned state's witness. In exchange for his cooperation, he received a 2-year prison sentence with credit for time served, far less than the amount of time that was handed down to the people he helped the feds convict. While Hernandez made himself an instant target by cooperating with the authorities, it was essentially the only way he was going to avoid spending a large portion of his adulthood behind bars. Looking at it from that angle, it's understandable that he snitched, but the streets don't forgive, and people were just waiting for vengeance to strike following his release from custody in 2020. In early 2023, Hernandez was brutally attacked by 3 men in the locker room of an LA fitness center in South Florida. In a disturbing video of the beatdown, the attackers could be heard calling the rapper a rat who wouldn't be tolerated in their hood. The trio were later charged with robbery and battery in connection with the assault. In an Instagram post, Hernandez said that he'd been walking around in public without security for 2 years before the attack happened. He further clarified that he wasn't mad about the assault because that's just how street life works. And while the incident undoubtedly stemmed from the musician's very public court case and his decision to snitch, it appeared as though the attackers had no direct connection with Hernandez. He wrote, "Just imagine having nothing to do with the situation and feel obligated to make it your business. Very weird." 11. Bebe Rexha. Fans of the Brooklyn-born singer Bebe Rexha were having a great time watching her perform in Manhattan one evening in 2023, when a disrespectful audience member ruined the entire show by throwing a cell phone at her face. Rexha immediately turned and fell to the floor, and was escorted off stage while covering her injured forehead. The concert was cut short, and witnesses shared photos and footage of the senseless act while expressing concern over Bebe Rexha's well-being. They were also angry toward the person responsible for her injuries. In an Instagram post, the singer shared close-ups of her injuries, which included a black eye, swelling, redness, and cuts to her face that required stitches. Regardless, though, she reassured her followers that she was okay. Authorities charged a 27-year-old New Jersey man named Nicholas Malvania with assault, attempted assault, and aggravated harassment. According to the New York Post, Malvania claimed during his arraignment that he was trying to get Rexha to take a photo with his phone by participating in a TikTok trend that involves throwing one's phone onto a stage for a celebrity to snap a picture with. He allegedly told cops that he didn't mean to hit the singer, but according to a criminal complaint, he admitted that he was trying to hit Rexha with his phone because he thought it would be funny. It's unclear which, if any, versions of events is true. During an interview with the Post outside the courthouse several weeks later, Malvania's lawyer, Todd Spodek, said that the defense had not received any evidence to support the charges. He further stated that the defense was considering all relevant motions and that he anticipated a resolution short of trial, with all criminal charges being dropped. For now, Malvania remains free without bail pending the outcome of his case. 10. Ava Max. Just days after Bebe Rexha was hit in the face with a fan's cell phone in June of 2023, singer Ava Max was smacked in the face by an audience member during a concert in Los Angeles. Footage of the disturbing attack showed a man storming the stage and striking Ava in the middle of her performance, right as a security guard rushed after him and dragged him away. The singer was momentarily taken aback by the assault, but she finished her dance routine before exiting the stage. She later revealed that the man hit her so hard he scratched the inside of her eye. In a tweet, Ava reassured her followers that the disruptive guest was permanently banned from her concerts, and she thanked the rest of her LA fans for being a great audience. The recent assaults on Bebe Rexha and Ava Max came amid a concerning uptick in musicians being attacked by concertgoers. In the year leading up to the two incidents, several other singers had objects thrown at them while on stage. Harry Styles was hit in the eye with a Skittle and in the crotch with a water bottle, and Kelsey Ballerini was struck in the face with a bracelet during a concert in Idaho. Pink was shocked beyond words when someone threw what appeared to be cremated human ashes onto the stage during a performance in London, while Lil Nas X paused a live show in Sweden to address his audience about an adult toy that someone chucked in his direction. Other artists have been hit, grabbed, or full-on attacked by crazed audience members in recent times, including Taylor Swift, Beyoncé, and Justin Bieber. There's no clear cause for the disturbing trend, but there are theories. Speaking with Newsweek, Manhattan-based entertainment lawyer Frank Salzano speculated that the 24/7 connectivity and close access that fans feel that they have to celebrities may play a role in what he described as the false belief that they have a right to act out as they see fit. Salzano described the behavior as crossing a clear line of decency and in some instances rising to criminal behavior. He also predicted that these incidents will lead to heightened security and stricter rules at concerts. In other words, crazed fans who lack basic respect are at risk of ruining the fun of concerts not only for themselves, but for other members of the public who are there to innocently enjoy the show. 9. Seth Rollins. It's a bad idea to attack anybody because violence is wrong, but it's an especially bad idea to attack a professional wrestler. To most people, this statement would qualify as basic, obvious common sense. But one WWE fan apparently missed the obvious in 2021 when he attacked Seth Rollins during Monday Night Raw at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York. Rollins was exiting the staging area after a match with Finn Balor when the overly excited spectator, later identified as 24-year-old Elisa Spencer, charged at him without warning from one of the front rows of the audience. In the blink of an eye, Rollins had Spencer in a headlock, and he had no apparent plans to release his grip as referees rushed over to the scene. When it comes to WWE, it's sometimes hard to tell whether an incident is staged or if it's real, but this was no pre-written storyline, and the reactions of Rollins, the referees, and everyone else involved were completely unplanned. Spencer's anger toward Rollins was also authentic. Speaking with the New York Daily News after the incident, Spencer apologized for his behavior and revealed that he'd been catfished by someone who pretended to be Rollins online. The scammer kept the unsuspecting young man on the hook for 2 years, during which time Spencer sent the stranger around $3,000 in gift cards, believing that Rollins was going to help him advance his own wrestling ambitions. After learning Spencer's story and about the mental anguish he suffered at the hands of his catfisher, Rollins responded with sympathy rather than anger, stating that he hoped Spencer got the help he needed and that his mind was in a better place. While there were no hard feelings between the men, Spencer still had to answer in the court of law for his actions. He was charged with attempted assault and attempted violation of arts and cultural affairs, which is the legal term for disrupting a live sporting event. But the current status of the case is unclear. 8. Alexander Grekov. After the ongoing war in Ukraine brought many aspects of daily life to an abrupt halt in the country, a group of actors and actresses from the Lesia Ukrainka National Academic Drama Theatre got special permission to travel to Dublin, Ireland, where they performed a Ukrainian version of a play called Translations. After finishing their final performance one evening in June of 2023, actor Alexander Grekov was viciously assaulted by a group of 3 women and 2 men outside the Abbey Theatre. The 23-year-old was outside smoking when the attackers approached and snatched his cigarette out of his mouth. They also grabbed his pack of cigarettes. Grekov followed the thieves and asked them what they were doing, and they responded by smashing his head with a glass bottle. A woman also bit the actor during the assault. A spokeswoman for the acting group, Anastasia Pavlenko, later told Dublin Live that she didn't witness the attack, but she noticed Grekov's injuries immediately afterward. She described seeing a hole in the young man's head and a lot of blood. Grekov was taken to a nearby hospital, where he received stitches to the hole in his head and other injuries. He was in good spirits shortly after the attack, but the incident put a damper on the group's experience in Dublin. Speaking with Dublin Live, Pavlenko said that the group was shocked by the assault because up until that point the city's residents had been very nice. And while it was a bad way to end their tour, the spokeswoman praised emergency responders and other locals for being kind and helpful in the aftermath of the attack. In a statement, the Abbey Theatre condemned the unprovoked act of violence. Writing for Dublin Live, Irish politician Gary Cannon described the attack as just another stark reminder of how dangerous Dublin city centres become at night. He expressed additional horror over the fact that Grekov was visiting Ireland from a war-torn country when he was targeted by the group of thugs, and he was devastated that the assault would be the lasting impression of the city that the actor must have taken home with him. Gannon further pointed out that the assault came amid a disturbing spike in violence in Dublin, and that it served as an example of how dangerous the city's becoming. He called on public officials and agencies to take action and work together to clean up the streets and make Dublin safer for both residents and visitors. Unfortunately, it's unclear whether Grekov's attackers have been arrested. 7. Gigi Hadid. While leaving a runway show during Milan Fashion Week in 2016, American supermodel Gigi Hadid was approached from behind and lifted off the ground by a complete stranger. She immediately began jabbing her elbow straight back into the man's face, while her sister and fellow supermodel Bella Hadid yelled at him to let go of Gigi. The creepy stranger, later identified as a Ukrainian prankster named Vitaly Sedgwick, quickly let go of the young woman, who charged after him and angrily shouted at him until a security guard pulled her back. Sedgwick ran from the scene with his tail between his legs, and the incident was over just as soon as it began. It took some convincing, but security eventually persuaded Gigi to get into a car that was waiting for her. And after a while she finally agreed, but only after insisting that the guards find the man who had attacked her. Footage of the blonde bombshell's reaction to Sedgwick went viral, and Gigi received widespread praise for her quick thinking and highly effective response to the unwelcome advance. The 21-year-old later told writer Lena Dunham that she didn't even have time to think before she threw her elbows backwards. Thanks to her 2 years of boxing training, instinct kicked in, and her body just knew what to do. While most people were impressed with Gigi's handling of the incident, some criticized her for what one news outlet described as not model behavior. In a tweet, the model wrote that she had every right to defend herself against being manhandled. She also mentioned how fast he ran away. 6. Karen Fukuhara. As an alarming wave of anti-Asian crimes gripped the United States following the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, actress Karen Fukuhara took to Instagram to share her experience after being targeted by the senseless hatred. The normally private 30-year-old, who's best known for starring in the action series The Boys, revealed that she had been hit in the back of the head while on her way to buy a coffee. After having her hat knocked off her head, Karen looked back to see who had hit her. She described her attacker as a random man, making it clear that the two didn't know each other and had no prior connections, and said that he continued walking after he struck her. Karen considered confronting her attacker, but she changed her mind after she noticed that it turned around and was heading in her direction. It simply wasn't worth the risk to her safety. The two strangers made eye contact for several moments while the man yelled at Karen, but afterward he walked away without further incident. It wasn't the first time the actress had experienced racism, but it was the first time she was ever physically attacked during a hate crime. After realizing that some of the people in her life may not realize that racially motivated attacks happen daily, Karen felt compelled to share her story in hopes of raising awareness. She also stressed the importance of holding perpetrators responsible for their hate crimes. At a time when anti-Asian attacks and other prejudice-related acts of violence seem to be on the rise, Karen's post sparked an important dialogue about how to respond to these crimes and the urgent need for Americans to take a stand against hate. 5. Gavin DeGraw. After concluding a successful tour with Maroon 5 and Train during the summer of 2011, singer Gavin DeGraw returned to his home in New York City to relax and catch up with friends. At the end of a night out drinking at his favorite bar in Manhattan, he set out for the short walk home at around 4 a.m. But just a few blocks later, he was brutally attacked by a group of men he encountered on the street. DeGraw tried walking to the hospital, and he made it about a mile before someone called 911. He later told Us magazine that he'd tried calling for help, but he was bleeding so much that he was struggling to use his phone. The singer was picked up by an ambulance and was treated for a concussion, a broken nose, facial fractures, black eyes, and multiple cuts and bruises. During his interview with Us magazine, DeGraw said that he didn't remember much about the attack due to his concussion. He vaguely recalled the person who called 911 telling him that he'd been hit by a taxi cab, but he believed that the driver had simply seen how bloody he was and drove off without picking him up as he tried to hail a ride. DeGraw speculated that the taxi had maybe knocked him off balance and caused him to fall, but he knew it wasn't the main cause of his injuries. He said that he believed the altercation started when he reacted to a rude comment one of his attackers made in passing. And while he didn't remember the nature of the remark, DeGraw said that he was pretty sure he confronted the group and let them know that he didn't like what they said. In his words, the world wasn't big enough for all of us at that moment in time. While the singer credited the NYPD with taking the case seriously, no arrests were ever made. But DeGraw refused to live in fear or change his lifestyle after the incident, and he was grateful for the outpouring of support he received from fans and fellow musicians alike. 4. Lulu Taylor. While swimming off Clifton Beach in Cape Town, South Africa in early 2023, Raised by Wolves actress Lulu Taylor was assaulted by a rampaging seal pup. Footage of the attack showed the crazed creature charging toward a young boy, while fellow beachgoers ran over to pry the animal off of him. The seal then set its sights on Taylor, who didn't seem to hear the lifeguard's whistle or the people along the shore yelling for her to get out of the water. Taylor could be heard screaming at the top of her lungs while the creature clamped its jaws down on her. She tried unsuccessfully to fight the seal off, prompting onlookers to rush to her aid. Good Samaritans pulled Taylor onto the beach while a man grabbed onto the seal and tossed it back out into the water. In an Instagram post describing the harrowing experience, the actress said that she was bitten 6 times and that she had to go to the emergency room for her injuries. She and 2 other swimmers received antibiotics and were treated for their wounds. And while the seal in the video didn't seem very big at first glance, Taylor's terrified shrieks and the severity of her injuries speak to the animal's destructive capabilities. Seal attacks on humans are rare, but these incidents are on the rise in certain parts of the world, including along the South African coast. According to experts, the unusually aggressive behavior is most likely caused by a poisonous algae bloom that releases a neurotoxin called domoic acid into the water. While the algae seems to have no ill effects on fish, it causes the brains of seals and sea lions to swell, resulting in an array of unusual effects. The behavior ranges from comatose and lethargic to hyperactive and disorientated. While the experience was undoubtedly traumatic for Taylor, she said that she still loves the ocean and all of its animals. She also speculated that climate change may be causing the noticeable spike in cases of mammals being affected by the toxic algae bloom. 3. Aman Dalal. In a terrifying act of violence that was partially captured on camera in early 2023, a hatchet-wielding madman attacked Punjabi actor Aman Dalal outside of Planet Fitness in Corona, California, roughly 50 miles east of Los Angeles. During what began as a regular morning for gym members, Dalal rushed into the business covered in blood. The 41-year-old model-turned-actor had been stabbed several times by the suspect, who authorities later identified as 30-year-old Ronald Chand, and was seeking help. Chand rushed into the gym after Dalal and held him at knife point while screaming irrationally. But without stopping to think twice about their own safety, 4 nearby gym-goers sprang into action and took the suspect to the ground, enabling Dalal to escape from his attacker. The Good Samaritans took Chand's hatchet and knife away and held him on the ground until police arrived. One of the men who helped subdue the suspect later said that he believed he smelled methamphetamine on Chand. And if that were true, it might explain the multiple nonsensical statements Chand made throughout the ordeal, including "please respect us," "give me water," and "you want to take advantage of me." Dalal was taken to a nearby hospital, where he received stitches and staples for multiple stab wounds to his head and body. Thankfully though, his injuries were none life-threatening. In the meantime, Chan was booked into custody on an attempted murder charge, and he remains behind bars on $1 million bail. In a social media update, Dalal shared footage of his healing injuries and thanked his followers for their support as he continued along his journey to recovery. 2. Shakira. During an afternoon stroll at a park in Barcelona in 2021, the pop singer Shakira and her young son were attacked by a pair of wild boars. In a series of alarming Instagram posts, the Colombian crooner described how the crazed creatures ran off into the woods with her purse. Determined not to let the thieving mammals get away with their crime, Shakira managed to retrieve her bag, but by the time she got it back, it was destroyed. Luckily, the singer and her son weren't seriously injured. While this may sound like a freak incident, it actually reflects a disturbing spike in wild boar attacks on humans that have occurred in Spain in recent years. According to the BBC, the free-roaming mammals are considered one of the world's most invasive species due to their remarkable ability to survive in almost any environment. They tend to thrive especially well in cities, where they feed on the endless supply of human-produced garbage. In 2016 alone, Spanish police received nearly 1,200 complaints about disruptive boars holding up traffic, eating out of pet feeders, and attacking humans and their animal companions. That number's only increased in recent years as the boars become increasingly aggressive and dangerous. And the problem isn't only happening in Spain. It's become an issue throughout much of Europe, where the population was estimated at 10 million or more in 2021. In addition to being aggressive, wild boars are known to carry a variety of diseases, putting human populations at risk of contracting potentially deadly zoonotic viruses and potentially triggering another pandemic. Simply put, it's not safe for humans to live in close proximity to the creatures. Most people seem to agree that they want the boars out of their living environment, but there are differing opinions on how to deal with the problem. Numerous European cities have introduced culling programs, which is a polite term for killing enough boar to get the population down to a manageable level. But these solutions have proven to be controversial due to a handful of headlining cases, including an officer who accidentally shot their partner while trying to kill a boar, and another incident where law enforcement shot tranquilizer darts at a boar inside of a children's playground. And now for number 1. But if you want to hear even more stories, stay tuned for some extra content that you might have missed. 1. Paulie Perrette. Even if you don't know the actress Paulie Perrette by name, you may have seen her on the CBS series NCIS as the character Abby Sciuto, whom she portrayed from 2003 until 2018. For a celebrity, she's maintained a relatively low profile over the years thanks to her drama-free lifestyle. Perrette has always been selective about how much of her life she shares with the public. But in an unusual display of openness in 2015, she revealed that she'd been assaulted outside her Hollywood Hills home by a homeless man with a violent criminal history. In a tweet, the actress described how she was walking across the street to a nearby property that she'd recently purchased when her very psychotic attacker jumped her out of nowhere. The suspect grabbed Perrette's arm and held on to her while repeatedly punching her in the nose and forehead, and the whole time he kept telling her that he was going to kill her. At some point during the assault, the man yelled that his name was William. He told Perrette not to forget it and once again threatened to kill her. In an attempt to calm her attacker down, Perrette said that William was a beautiful name and that it was her nephew's name. Then, after delivering one final blow to her face, the man released the terrified actress and said, "Get out of here." Perrette said that she collapsed on a sidewalk nearby and called a friend to pick her up after a passerby ignored her. The passerby later clarified that he didn't realize Perrette was in distress and that he walked past her because he simply thought she was homeless and disheveled. He said he would have stopped if he'd realized that Perrette needed help and wished her a speedy recovery. Using a sketch of the suspect that Perrette made, her friend James tracked the attacker down. James alerted the police to the suspect's whereabouts and they took him into custody on felony counts of false imprisonment by violence and making a criminal threat. Jail records identified the alleged attacker as 45-year-old David Merck. He was ultimately deemed incompetent to stand trial and was ordered to undergo inpatient treatment at a mental health facility until he's deemed to no longer pose a threat to society. During an interview with Entertainment Tonight, Perrette said that she harbors no ill will towards her attacker. She said that her heart breaks for people who are living on the street without the help that they need, and that the experience was a wake-up call that motivated her to call for more outreach and resources for the homeless population. 16. Manuela Victoria de Araujo Farias. Indonesia has some of the world's strictest drug laws, which can land someone on death row even for a non-violent offense. So it would be an understatement to say that it's a bad idea to try smuggling drugs into the country. A 19-year-old lingerie worker from Brazil named Manuela Victoria de Araujo Farias is learning this lesson the hard way after authorities discovered 3 kilos of cocaine in her suitcase at Bali International Airport. Farias had just arrived in Indonesia when the drugs were found in January 2023. The cocaine had gone undetected throughout the 2 flights she took to reach the island. She was promptly arrested for trafficking, despite her claims that gang members somehow tricked her into smuggling the contraband. If convicted, Farias could face execution by firing squad. Her lawyer, Davi Lira da Silva, told the Bali Times that his client traveled to Bali because she wanted to pray in Buddhist temples for the healing of her gravely ill mother, who had recently suffered a stroke. Police in Santa Catarina, Brazil, have reportedly declined to comment on their investigation of the alleged gang members who gave Farias the drugs. The arrest came shortly after a 52-year-old Australian surfer named Jeffrey Walton managed to avoid the death penalty for smuggling drugs into Indonesia. In lieu of a traditional punishment, he spent 8 months at a rehab facility, which isn't a bad deal compared to the alternative. Unlike Farias, he was caught with a personal supply of drugs, which was a factor in the court's willingness to be lenient. The outcome of the young woman's case, however, remains to be seen. 15. Abigail Finny. After falling asleep in her boyfriend's dorm room at Purdue University one day in 2017, 20-year-old Abigail Finny awoke to what she thought was her partner trying to get frisky. She went along with it, only to realize afterward that she'd hooked up with her boyfriend's buddy. The room was dark, and Finny hadn't turned her head to look at him during the steamy session. She was understandably outraged and horrified after discovering that she'd just got it on with someone other than her boyfriend. The ordeal created some very confusing questions, including whether the act was consensual. Finny suddenly felt violated, so she and her boyfriend, Donald Grant Ward, went to the police. During questioning, Ward said that he truly believed Finny had mistakenly slept with his friend, thinking it was him. Assuming Ward's pal purposely deceived Finny, his actions were undoubtedly wrong from a moral standpoint. But the unusual scenario isn't considered a crime in most states, including Indiana, where the incident took place. Under the state's assault laws, the victim must be either compelled by force or unable to consent. Prosecutors nevertheless tried to argue the case in court, but a jury found Ward not guilty, and he was acquitted of all the charges brought against him. The outcome came as a devastating blow to Finny, who said she struggled with anxiety and had to take time off from school while she dealt with the trauma of the ordeal. But until the state changes its definition of the crime that Ward was accused of, it's unlikely that cases like this will hold up in court. 14. Cynthia Hoffman. Cynthia Hoffman thought Denali Bremer was her best friend, so she was happy to join when Bremer invited her to go hiking at Thunderbird Falls in Anchorage, Alaska one day in 2019. The young women were joined by a handful of other teens, including Bremer's friends, Caleb Leyland and Caden McIntosh. During the visit, the group lured Hoffman away from the main trail and into an isolated spot, where they bound and shot her before throwing her lifeless body into the nearby Eklutna River. Caden McIntosh pulled the trigger, while Bremer snapped photos and captured footage of the horrific crime for an online friend who talked her into carrying out the murder. The elusive individual, who she knew only as Tyler, claimed to be extremely wealthy. He offered Bremer $9 million to kill someone and capture it on camera for him. Most people in their right minds would never do it, but Bremer immediately got to planning the murder. She also recruited Leyland, McIntosh, and 2 other friends to help her execute and discard her best friend like trash. After the murder, the culprits got rid of Hoffman's belongings in an attempt to destroy evidence. When the victim failed to return home and her family began to worry, the killers claimed that they dropped Hoffman off at a location of her choosing after spending time in the park. They said they hadn't heard from her since then and had no knowledge of her whereabouts. But they did a poor job of covering their tracks, and it was only a matter of days before they were in police custody on suspicion of murder. Authorities also identified Bremer's online friend Tyler as 21-year-old man from Indiana named Darren Schill Miller and charged him as well. Bremer pleaded guilty to first-degree murder in early 2023. She faces 30 to 99 years in prison and is scheduled to be sentenced in August. But the cases against McIntosh, Leyland, and Schill Miller are ongoing. 13. Deadly prank kills dictator's brother. Kim JongNam was the eldest son of the late Korean dictator Kim Jong-il and the half-brother of the Hermit Kingdom's current leader, Kim Jong-un. For several years during the 1990s, he was considered next in line for the throne. But he was booted from the line of succession in 2001 after he was caught trying to enter Disneyland in Tokyo with a fake passport, which brought deep embarrassment to the regime. Kim JongNam was then exiled 2 years later and proceeded to live a mostly low-key existence, minus his occasional outspoken criticism against the Kim dynasty. The Kims don't exactly have a good track record for tolerating even the slightest criticism, but to have negative statements from one of their own family members circulating in the international press was like an extra kick to the gut. It's believed that Kim JongNam survived at least one assassination attempt in 2006, and that his paranoid half-brother orchestrated it in a bid to permanently silence him. Then, in February 2013, 2 women attacked Kim JongNam from behind with a deadly nerve agent called VX at the Kuala Lumpur International Airport in Malaysia. He was caught completely off guard, giving him no chance to avoid the poisoning. His condition almost immediately began to rapidly deteriorate, and Kim was unresponsive by the time he arrived at a nearby hospital. Unfortunately for the victim, efforts to save his life were unsuccessful. Authorities initially suspected that the women who ambushed Kim with the deadly toxin were knowingly working for North Korean agents, even though neither of them was from North Korea or had any traceable ties to the regime. Shortly after the poisoning, 4 North Korean suspects managed to slip out of the country without being interrogated, leaving Siti Aisha and Duan Thi Huang behind to take full blame for the incident. The women claimed that they had no idea they were going to end up killing someone, and that it certainly wasn't their intention. They told police that they were offered paid gigs on a hidden camera show and thought they were carrying out a harmless prank. And while this may seem like a clever excuse, all signs pointed toward the women being truthful. In what appeared to be an elaborate ruse to fool the suspects into unknowingly assassinating Kim, the show's so-called producers had filmed Aisha and Huang performing multiple on-camera pranks in public places in the days leading up to the incident. It seemed to the women that they were filming a real TV show, and they had no reason to think that the people who hired them had sinister intentions. Aisha and Huang were initially charged with the murder, but the criminal charges against the pair were eventually dropped. 12. Nicholas Billingham. When 42-year-old Nicholas Billingham stopped showing up for work in October 2021, his boss, who also happened to be his neighbor, went looking for him at the home he shared with his longtime girlfriend in Northamptonshire, England. Billingham's girlfriend, schoolteacher Fiona Beale, answered the door looking visibly upset by something. She didn't want to talk at first, but later claimed that Billingham had cheated on her and moved in with another woman. Because the man had a history of being unfaithful, the neighbor took Beale's explanation at face value. And a few weeks later, Beale seemed to be back to her normal self and appeared to be moving on with her life. Around the same time, Billingham's relatives became concerned and reached out after not hearing from him for a while. They received text messages from his phone saying that he was laying low after his relationship with Beale fell apart. Wanting to respect his space, they left the situation alone. In early 2023, around 5 months after Billingham was last seen alive, police responded to a call at Beale's residence about a mentally unstable woman in distress. Responding officers came across Beale's diary, which appeared to contain a confession to murdering Billingham and burying him in her yard. According to the journal, Beale lured Billingham into their bathroom with the promise of a good time, then put a mask on him and stabbed him to death. She was apparently convinced that he'd cheated on her again, which explains the motive behind the crime. A search of the yard turned up Billingham's mummified remains. In court, Beale admitted to manslaughter but denied murdering her partner on the basis of her fragile mental state at the time. As of May 2023, her trial appears to be ongoing. 11. Migrants dash dreams. During an interview with Coda Media in early 2023, 45-year-old Gurinder Dhillon described how he migrated from Punjab, India to southern Italy's Lazio region in 2009 for work. An agent he met in his home village had promised a better life, including high enough pay to support his family back in India, a house, nice clothing, and other trappings of a middle-class European lifestyle. But as you've likely already guessed, Dhillon bought a false dream. Using a $16,000 loan, he paid the agent to arrange his visa and travel, which realistically only cost around $2,000, amounting to an enormous profit for the recruiter. Dhillon expected to work at a farm in an area called the Pontine Marshes picking fruit and vegetables, and while that part was true, the working and living conditions he was subjected to were much different than promised. For less than €4 per hour, he and others toiled away in the stifling heat as an overseer harshly barked orders at them to work faster and pick more produce. As the temperature crept into the triple digits on his first day of work, Dhillon had to stop at least once to wring the sweat out of his drenched socks. He later told Coda journalist Isabel Cockerell that he quickly realized he'd been duped into signing up for a job that he said wasn't far removed from forced labor. When he asked an experienced co-worker if it would be like this forever, the colleague answered yes. The tradition of recruiting workers to the Pontine Marshes from other countries dates back to the Mussolini era. Under the dictator's leadership, laborers transformed the once swampy marshland into a vast tract of farmable soil. But the working conditions there remain brutal and archaic and amount to forced labor under the United Nations standards due to the low wages, long working hours, and controlling bosses. Some are paid almost no money, with at least one person being told that 3 months' worth of his wages were put toward taxes. When he looked further into the matter, he discovered it was a lie. His taxes hadn't been paid and had unknowingly worked for free. Another worker told Cockerell that he was paid just $250 after being promised around $1,300 for a monthly check, which included working 12 to 14-hour shifts 6 days a week. Sadly, these laborers are at the mercy of their supervisors, who have the power to interfere with their immigration status. And as Italy experiences a suspected revival of elements of its fascist past with the rise of pro-Mussolini Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, hope for better conditions and basic rights at these farms has sadly hit a new low. 10. Problems in paradise. From 1959 to 1984, North Korea encouraged ethnic Koreans to move there from South Korea and Japan as part of a repatriation program that essentially promised a paradise on Earth. Designed to help compensate for the number of workers lost in the Korean War, it was carried out with the support of the Japanese government, which allowed the deceptive campaign to be promoted within the country and helped arrange transportation to North Korea. The program mainly targeted Koreans who were living in Japan, many of whom were forcibly relocated there and subjected to brutal working conditions. Lured by the prospect of jobs, education, free healthcare, and other benefits, around 93,000 people took advantage of the opportunity, only to discover that life in North Korea was nothing like it was cracked up to be. In addition to being assigned low-paying manual labor jobs, enduring egregious human rights violations, and being afforded little freedom, they unfortunately learned that leaving the country wasn't as easy as entering, and that the only way to do it was to escape the oppressive regime. People who are caught trying to escape North Korea are typically shot on sight, executed at a later date, or imprisoned at one of the regime's brutal labor camps, where they're essentially worked and starved to the brink of death. To deter citizens from trying to flee, North Korea authorities similarly punished the extended relatives and multiple generations of a family, even if they had nothing to do with a person's escape or attempted escape. In 2018, 5 of the estimated 150 people who managed to leave North Korea after entering the repatriation program filed a lawsuit in a Japanese court, accusing Pyongyang of illegal solicitation and detainment. They requested several $100,000 each in compensation, but their hopes were dashed in early 2023 when the court shot down the claims. Because the litigants entered the program between 1960 and 1972, their complaints had surpassed the 20-year statute of limitations. Moreover, the judge overseeing the case ruled that the Japanese court has no jurisdiction over the escapees' detainment in North Korea. The lawyer representing the plaintiffs, Genji Fukuda, said that his clients plan to appeal their cases. He also accused the judge of failing to address the matter head-on and stressed the importance of supporting the victims and holding Pyongyang accountable. The plaintiffs, who said that many of the people who took part in the program have died, continue to hold out hope, not only that their lawsuit will prevail, but that their relatives who haven't escaped will be rescued from North Korea. And while they know that Kim Jong-un most likely won't pay them anything, even if he's ordered to do so, a favorable verdict would set a precedent for future cases. 9. Rosana Delgado. In April 2021, 37-year-old mother of 2 and rideshare driver Rosana Delgado never came home after telling her husband, Yoni Castro, that she was about to pick up her last customer of the day. Castro attempted to find his wife by tracing her last known movements through her cell phone data, and when he discovered a bloody mask at one of the locations she'd been to earlier that day, he called the police. A week later, Rosana's charred remains were found at a remote cabin 120 miles from the Atlanta area shopping mall that she was last seen alive at. It was her last stop after enduring days of brutal torture at the hands of an international drug gang. According to prosecutors, Rosana was lured to the mall under the guise of a shopping trip. The captors then moved her to various locations over the next week before taking her to the cabin and murdering her. Authorities believe the gang members planned the abduction ahead of time. It's unclear whether Rosana knew any of the suspects or if she knew the suspects' motives for kidnapping her. By the time any of the guilty party were identified, most of them had fled the area and some had even left the country. While 3 still remain at large, federal agents managed to track down and arrest most of the co-conspirators. In early 2022, a grand jury indicted 14 defendants on a laundry list of federal charges, including murder, kidnapping, concealing a death, aggravated battery, RICO violations, and more. Oscar Manuel Garcia, who faced the most serious charges, pleaded guilty to a slew of counts, with one charge being malice murder. As a result, he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Defendant Juan Ayala Rodriguez managed to avoid a murder conviction, but nevertheless received a life sentence due to the severity of his crimes. 3 other defendants received varying prison terms, ranging from 13 to 30 years, while a handful of other suspects received unspecified sentences. 8. Alex Hamzy and Dustin Del Monte. Members of law enforcement risk their lives daily to protect society, and sometimes they're targeted specifically for being cops. Such was the case for Connecticut State Police Sergeant Alex Hamzy and Lieutenant Dustin DeMonte, who responded to a home in Bristol late one evening in October 2022 after receiving a call about an alleged domestic incident between siblings. It sounded pretty routine, but after arriving on the scene, they were met with a deadly barrage of gunfire that claimed both their lives. A third responding officer, Alec Lorato, was injured but survived. Officer Lorato returned fire and killed the suspected shooter, 35-year-old Nicholas Brutcher, at the scene. His brother, 32-year-old Nathan Brutcher, survived with injuries and was released from the hospital a few days later. The Brutcher's neighbor, Danny Rodriguez, told CBS News that he heard dozens of gunshots at the home across the street, followed by a distraught female voice yelling, "You killed them." Shortly after the incident, authorities revealed that they believe Nicholas Brutcher placed a fake 911 call to lure the officers to the residence. 5 months later, in early 2023, questions still surrounded the senseless ambush. According to records obtained by local station WFSB, Rexha lied in wait for the police to arrive, hiding behind some bushes in camouflage with an AR-15 in his hands, ready to fire at any moment. He reportedly shot more than 80 rounds at the officers, attacking them from behind when they were almost completely defenseless against the onslaught of bullets. Body cam footage showed that the police were ordering the brother, Nathan Rexha, to exit the home with his hands up when the shooting began. Records haven't revealed who shot Nathan or if he was suspected of committing any crimes. But according to witnesses, the brothers were involved in a disturbance at a local bar earlier that night. The details of that incident, however, haven't been released to the public. The disturbing tragedy remains under investigation by the state police and the officer of the Inspector General. 7. Fake volunteer victimizes elderly Florida woman. A 91-year-old woman was watering her plants outside her home near Winter Park, Florida one evening in early 2023 when a white sedan pulled up. The senior citizen was approached by a woman claiming to be a YMCA volunteer who said she was there because the homeowner's backyard shared a property line with an abandoned YMCA facility. She said she needed access to the elderly woman's backyard so she could conduct a property assessment. The homeowner let the supposed volunteer into her yard and kept an eye on her for the next 20 to 30 minutes while she stood near the property line and took several phone calls. During the conversations, the woman could be heard discussing plans for the construction of a parking lot and to cut down a tree that was damaging the senior citizen's fence. It all sounded legit, according to the homeowner's daughter, Teresa Hood, who later told Click Orlando that the family had contacted the YMCA repeatedly in the past over code violations. After the representative left, the elderly woman realized that numerous valuables were missing from inside her home. Other valuable items were left untouched, causing Seminole County deputies to initially wonder if she'd simply misplaced the things that were missing. But a thorough search of the home turned up no sign of the belongings, and they ultimately concluded that the volunteer was a fake who lured the victim into her backyard so someone else could carry out the robbery unnoticed. A YMCA spokesperson told law enforcement that they hadn't sent a representative to the woman's home and that they planned to sell and demolish the property. Authorities said they were investigating the crime in hopes of identifying and arresting the suspects on burglary and grand theft charges. But at the moment, it's unclear whether the thieves are still at large. 6. Pensioner kidnapped in Perth. In early 2023, a 68-year-old retiree from China traveled to Australia to discuss a potential business opportunity with a 29-year-old man. He flew into Melbourne, where he met with his prospective partner, and the pair proceeded to fly to Western Australia together. From there, they drove to a house in Perth. But instead of entering a business agreement, like the man from China expected, he was held captive and tortured by the younger man and 2 accomplices, who were waiting at the home when they arrived. The kidnappers called the victim's relatives and demanded ransom payments in exchange for his release. But instead, the man's family contacted law enforcement. Police tracked the man's location to a short-term rental unit and bashed the door in, and after 2 days of enduring horrifying treatment, he was finally safe. Afterward, the victim was taken to the hospital with multiple injuries. In addition to the 29-year-old suspect, 2 men aged 31 and 37 were arrested in connection with the alleged extortion plan. They remain in custody amid their ongoing cases, and their identities remain concealed for the time being in accordance with Australian law. 5. Alexander Litvinenko. While working for Russia's Federal Security Service in the late 1990s, Alexander Litvinenko spoke out against acts of corruption that he claimed to have witnessed firsthand. He publicly accused high-ranking law enforcement officials of having ties to organized crime groups, plotting the assassination of a wealthy oligarch, and ordering him to kill government spies. After realizing there was no way to escape the crookedness of the Russian state as long as he remained in the country, especially as a government employee, Litvinenko packed up his family in 2000 and fled to London, where they were granted asylum. over the next handful of years, he became even more outspoken against corruption, writing 2 books filled with scathing allegations against Moscow. In October 2006, Litvinenko accused Vladimir Putin of ordering the assassination of journalist Anna Politkovskaya, who was murdered at her apartment building after she refused orders to stop reporting on topics that the Russian government disapproved of. Of course, the country's officials denied any involvement in the crime, which remains unsolved to this day. But many people believe that state officials had something to do with it, since they had reasons for wanting to permanently silence Politkovskaya. Litvinenko could have taken the murder as a sign to perhaps tone down his own activism for a while, but he remained as vocal as ever. Less than a month after Politkovskaya's death, and roughly a week before he was slated to testify about clandestine Russian activities in front of a Spanish court, he met with former KGB agents Andrei Lugovoy and Dmitry Kovtun at a hotel in London for tea. He suddenly fell seriously ill shortly afterward, and his condition deteriorated rapidly. 2 days later, Litvinenko was checked into intensive care. Doctors were powerless to help him as they struggled to figure out what was even wrong with him. All his hair started to fall out, he was vomiting violently and suffering from explosive diarrhea, and his mouth became filled with blisters. Soon enough, his organs began to shut down. With Litvinenko's help, doctors eventually discovered that he was completely riddled with an extremely toxic and highly radioactive chemical called polonium. During the meeting with the KGB agents, he unknowingly drank poisoned tea at the urging of his hosts. It was cold, so Litvinenko only took a few sips out of politeness, but that was all it took to fatally poison him. Law enforcement then discovered terrifyingly high amounts of polonium in the sink drain of Lugovoy and Kovtun's hotel room. Litvinenko accused Vladimir Putin of directly ordering the hit, while his wife similarly suggested that Moscow orchestrated the assassination. British authorities seemed to agree, with one Scotland Yard official saying that the only credible explanation for the poisoning is that Russian officials were involved in one way or another. After languishing in agony for 22 days, Litvinenko passed away, and he was buried in a lead coffin to prevent radiation from leaking out of it. 4. Grindr robberies. There have been multiple headlining cases in recent years involving violent attacks and robberies on victims who were targeted through dating apps. One of the latest arrests came in April 2023, when 22-year-old Ja Auntie Pleasant was booked into custody in San Antonio, Texas on 2 separate murder charges. According to court documents, Pleasant connected with both of his victims on the Grindr dating app, where he went by the alias Derek. The first deadly encounter occurred after he invited a 54-year-old man to his apartment for a late-night rendezvous. Pleasant allegedly approached the victim while he sat in his SUV and fatally shot him from the passenger side. Witnesses reported seeing the suspect grab a duffel bag from inside the vehicle before fleeing the scene. The very next day, police were called to the apartment of a 21-year-old man, where a concerned friend had come by to check on him after being unable to reach him on the phone. While looking in through the window, the friend saw him lying motionless and unresponsive. Emergency responders entered the home and found the young man dead with a gunshot wound to the back of his head. In addition to finding messages between Pleasant and both victims, investigators discovered matching shell casings at both murder scenes. The suspect was also connected to the crimes through fingerprints. Thankfully, police tracked him down and took him into custody before he could harm or kill anyone else. He remains behind bars on 2 murder charges. 3. International hostage trap. Tempted by the prospect of a job opportunity, a 19-year-old man from Alamo, Texas entered Mexico on foot in June of 2021 in hopes of making some money. A man he presumably didn't know very well, later identified as 26-year-old Sixto Gonzalez Jr., had offered him the job and promised to pick him up once he crossed the border. But instead of taking him to a work site, the stranger drove the teen to a house in the city of Reynosa, where he and several co-conspirators held the young man hostage. Gonzalez and his accomplices contacted the victim's family, demanding a $5,000 ransom and a gun in exchange for his safe return. When the family couldn't afford the ransom and failed to pay it, the gang sent them a dreadful video of the victim being beaten so hard with a wooden board that it broke. 2 days into the ordeal, law enforcement managed to locate the house and carried out a search. Beneath a blanket, they found the victim covered in bruises and bound with zip ties. Police also captured Gonzalez, and in a satisfying turn of events, he was taken into custody while the hostage got his freedom back. Gonzalez reportedly confessed to the abduction during questioning. He spent the next 2 years in federal custody while he faced charges in connection with the incident, and he might as well get comfortable because he likely won't be seeing freedom again for at least a handful of years. In 2023, Gonzalez pleaded guilty to hostage taking. The charge carries a sentence of up to life in prison and a fine of up to $250,000. The defendant is scheduled to be sentenced in August of 2023. 2. Deathbed confession leads to missing Florida man. In May of 2014, a Florida businessman with a checkered past named Donald Schoff vanished seemingly into thin air. His brother-in-law, James Stote, told Schoff's mother and his wife, as well as Schoff's sister, that he'd fled the country on his boat with a large amount of cash. Stote claimed that Schoff was living in Colombia under an alias, and his wife Dara and mother-in-law initially believed it, given Schoff's shady history. Every once in a while, Stote told the family that he'd run into Schoff during one of his quick and highly secretive stops back in the United States. About a year later, Dara discovered that her husband had taken over her brother's identity and was allegedly siphoning his bank accounts. As it turned out, Schoff had been working to keep his life on the straight and narrow. His business was apparently doing well, and he'd built up a considerable amount of assets as a real estate investor. Suspicious that Stote was lying about Schoff being alive and well, Dara filed for divorce and went to the FBI. But the fate of her missing brother remained a mystery for years until 2021, when Stote's former roommate Siegfried Maha fell gravely ill. In a shocking deathbed confession that nobody saw coming, Maha called a former cop he was acquainted with and revealed that Schoff had been murdered around the time he disappeared in 2014. He went on to accuse another one of Schoff's sisters, 64-year-old Darlene Ann Schoff Brock, of shooting her brother in the back of the head. Maha drew a map directing authorities to Schoff's remains, which were buried on one of his own properties in Dania Beach. While awaiting DNA test results to confirm the identity of the body, investigators questioned Darlene, who stuck to the claim that her brother had left the country years earlier. But she quickly lawyered up and stopped cooperating. Law enforcement also spoke with Stote, who reportedly gave detectives a first-hand account of what happened on the night of the murder. His version of events corroborated with the details of his former roommate's deathbed confession, and the DNA findings confirmed that the remains belonged to Schoff. In the end, Darlene was charged with first-degree murder. According to records, she's being held at the Broward County Jail on $250,000 bail while her case works its way through the court system. Stote, on the other hand, hasn't been charged in connection with the case, despite his alleged involvement. 1. Swindled by psychics. An Australian woman named Poonam paid $30 for a psychic reading at a shop in Sydney, which marked her first step toward financial ruin. By the time she shared her experience with the TV program A Current Affair in 2022, Poonam had blown more than $21,000 on the services of a clairvoyant, who always managed to keep her on the hook and continuously opening up her checkbook. Poonam told the show that she went to get her initial reading for fun. She never expected to become a seemingly bottomless pit of cash to her spiritual guide. But her fortune teller convinced her that she was surrounded by bad spirits, and that the only way to get rid of them was to invest in one round after the next of intensive prayers and rituals. A woman named Samjana, who visited the same psychic, claimed that she was told her family would die unless she paid to be cleansed of the demons surrounding her. Much like how Poonam got sucked in, the countless rituals never seemed to do the job. There was always some stubborn, lingering presence of evil, which of course would require yet another payment to make it go away. Unfortunately, Samjana didn't fully realize that she was being financially siphoned for no good reason until after all her money was depleted. And before she knew it, she had lost her entire life savings. From the outside looking in, it may seem like only a highly gullible person could fall for such an obvious scam. In fact, some people even have a hard time feeling bad for victims of these types of scams. But it happens often, and to perfectly intelligent people, with many victims losing tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. In fact, no human is immune to being manipulated, and crooked psychics are the absolute masters at it. They know how to target people's insecurities and to attract business from customers who are going through difficult times by selling them misguided hope. In recent years, the number of Australians being swindled by greedy fortune tellers has reportedly skyrocketed, causing deepening concerns among the country's scam watchdog groups as customers desperate for guidance and answers are bled completely dry. Between 2015 and 2018, the number of psychic scams increased by an estimated 300%, and civilians were siphoned to the tune of millions. It's likely safe to assume that the losses were bigger than the data shows, since not all scams get reported. With most of the world seeming to agree that times are bad right now, the problem only seems to be getting worse, and it's not only happening in Australia. Many modern-day spiritual scams are being carried out entirely on social media, where fraudsters have access to an unlimited pool of potential victims right from the comfort of their home. Thanks for watching. Would you rather experience short-lived fame before slipping quietly out of the celebrity scene and going back to being unknown? Or would you prefer to remain in the spotlight even if it meant being controversial and despised? Let us know in the comments below and remember to subscribe. See you soon. Bye.